Dive in the deep end, it's time to defend your movie.
Hello, friends, and welcome to this week's episode of Defending Your Movie. I am your host, Jeremy Meyer. First off, I just want to say, if you celebrate Thanksgiving, I hope everybody had a wonderful Thanksgiving last week. I know I did, or at least assuming I did, because I am recording this ahead of time. But Thanksgiving, always one of my favorite holidays. Who doesn't like eating a lot? And, seeing family, it's always nice. But I hope everyone had a good one. And, when it comes to Thanksgiving, there's one thing I always think about, and it is, sitting around with family, but turning on the TV, and inevitably it always feels like Star Wars is on TV around the holidays. And, when Disney started putting out their Star Wars movies, they were always releasing around Christmas. So inevitably, Star Wars has this kind of holiday feel to it to me now. So I figured what better movie to cover around the holidays than one of the more maligned Star Wars movies. And this week we are talking about Solo, a Star Wars story. Now, I didn't see Solo when it came out in the theater, not because I wasn't interested. I'm interested in every Star Wars movie. I just didn't get around to it. I was really busy. They released it in the summer, which, mostly they'd been releasing in December. So, was, busy summer, my work, my day job, other movies coming out. I just somehow never got around to it. I ended up seeing it a lot later. Like once it came out on Blu-ray, I picked it up. And then even then, I think it was a little while before I sat down and watched it. But I really like Solo. I really have no issue with Solo. And I really don't understand. I mean, okay, I guess I do kind of understand the hate the movie gets, but I think it's a little misplaced. And so this week I sit down with returning guest Allen Kesinger, good friend of mine, been on the podcast multiple times. Also, one of the bigger Star Wars fans I know. He's been to the Star Wars park at Disney more than anyone I know. But if I was gonna talk about Star Wars with somebody, I'm glad it was with Allen. So we kind of sit down and hash out our feelings on Solo, a Star Wars story. It was inevitable that we were going to get a Star Wars movie on here at some point. Everybody has different opinions of Star Wars movies. I personally love everything Star Wars, but, there are things to be said about certain movies in the franchise. But before we get into Solo, let's get our plugs out of the way. As always, you can follow us on social media at Defending Movie on Twitter and Instagram. You can also find our merch store at belowthecollar.com/defendingyourmovie, which we also have a Star Wars themed t-shirt. So you can go there and pick up, and I think it's actually Solo themed just because like the way the title works out. So honestly, go pick up a Solo shirt, take a photo of it, post yourself in it, and I'll give you another free t-shirt from Below the Collar. Just honestly, if you want a reason to want a free t-shirt, go search Electric Zombie on Below the Collar. The designs under that are incredible. So, if you buy one of our shirts, doesn't have to be the Solo shirt, although it's one of my favorites. Buy one of our shirts, post a picture, tag us, and I'll DM you, and, we'll set up getting you a free t-shirt from belowthecollar.com. But we also have our Patreon at patreon.com/defendingmovie. And as always, as you know, you can save 21% off your total order on thecrypticcloset.com. Get your horror-themed merchandise and parody shirts, pins, the Fanny DeVito fanny pack, which is my personal favorite item on the website. Be sure to use code DEFEND at checkout, and you'll get 21% off your entire order. But now that we got all that out of the way, without further ado, let's talk about Solo, a Star Wars story with Allen Kesinger. Yeah, so we previously covered another movie here recently. We talked about Clue. And in that recording, I don't remember how we dropped it, but we dropped a reference to this movie. And I was like, oh, yeah, we should totally talk about this because I definitely wanted to cover a Star Wars movie. And I think this is a good one to start with because I definitely feel this is one of the least popular Star Wars movies, and I don't necessarily agree with that. Did you see this one in the theater?
I did. Yes.
Okay. I did not. Because this what Last Jedi came out in like December, and then this was May, right? Like right after.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that was just one of the main problems is that it was way too soon after the last
Hmm.
one. And this was like 2018 already. I don't know
And
if you.
people were already angry.
Yeah,
So I think they were more than prepared to not give this any chance whatsoever.
yeah. My one of my favorite kind of reviews of this movie was hey, do you remember the beginning of The Last Crusade when they covered Indiana Jones's origin story? That's the perfect length for something like that. And like I really can't argue with that.
Right.
I do think so. Like when I first saw this movie, it was after the Blu-ray came out. I just went and bought it because I buy everything, and
Mhm.
it's Star Wars. Of course, I'm gonna buy it.
Right.
And it sat on my shelf for like a little bit, and I was like, okay, I got some time. Let's sit down and watch it. And I was watching it, and I'm like, very low expectations because at this point, I've seen even people that we both know.
Mm.
Like just talking about it, and like no one seemed really big on it, and I'm like, I'm kind of enjoying it. And
Mhm.
like some of the problems I will most certainly acknowledge, but it was like about half, not even halfway through, it was like the 30 minute mark.
Mhm.
Somebody tweeted at me because I had tweeted that I was watching. I was like, oh, is it a lot easier to see on Blu-ray? Because in the theater I felt like I couldn't see anything. And I
Mhm.
honestly did not notice how dark this movie was until somebody said it.
Huh.
Like, did you notice in the theater, like when you saw it?
No, like the only part of the film that I would consider dark and hard to see would be when he's on the planet or whatever and he meets up with kind of like the crew,
Yeah, Beckett's
and
crew.
it's all like muddy and just like war is happening.
Yeah,
But like I you know, now that I think back on it, yeah, no, I didn't think it was too dark, but I'm getting older. My memory isn't what it used to be. So
yeah. Like, and watching it this time, I definitely noticed. Like one thing I noticed is all of the scenes in the Millennium Falcon cockpit are all super dark in a way that
mhm.
they did not feel like in the original trilogy or any of the other
Mhm.
movies, I guess, for that matter.
Mhm.
But like honestly, I never really bumped into it. And yeah, in that war scene, it feels intentional. Like it's supposed to be chaos. You're not supposed to know what's going on. Like I feel like even the storytelling in that scene is they don't even know which direction they're supposed to be running, and that's why they're all getting shot down and stuff like
Right.
that. So like to me, I didn't really bump into it.
Mhm. Mhm.
But walking out of the theater, what was your like initial impression of the movie?
Oh gosh, yeah, I vividly remember coming out of it and being like, eh, and just feeling like it's such a by the numbers origin story. Like it's so stuck in a thing where it was like, okay, so we're making a Han Solo movie, so we have to show that he's from Corellia. We have to show how he meets up with Chewbacca. We
Mm-hmm.
have to show how he gets the Millennium Falcon. We have to show how he gets his blaster. We have to show how he gets through the Kessel Run in less than 12 parsecs. And it was like the movie comes off as like, we have to show these things, and so we got to build a movie around it. And so it just comes off, and this is my first viewing. This is my first
Yeah.
viewing. And it just comes off as so contrite, and like kind of made by committee. But I do acknowledge that there was some turmoil on this film because it
Yeah.
was supposed to be done by two other guys, and I'm blanking on their
Lord and
names.
Miller, the guys
That's
who
right.
did like the Lego movie and 21 Jump Street. Like
Right.
they did the whole movie and then they reshot the whole movie with Ron Howard.
Right. So that has something to do with it, I'm sure. Um, but then I think, well, kind of Rogue One was kind of had a little bit of a troubled production, but that's I think a lot of people consider that probably one of the better of the new Star Wars movies.
Yeah, and sorry
But
to sidebar real quick.
mhm,
So
mhm,
like the overall Disney Star Wars, like how do you
mhm.
feel about these movies overall?
overall, now sitting here with you on July 10th, 2021, I feel like they dropped the ball.
Yeah.
And primarily that's speaking towards the new trilogy. Rogue
So
One,
789.
789. Rogue One is incredible. In fact, I was having a conversation with my brother and a gentleman who builds Star Wars droids for fun, and we're talking about like we're pointing out the good things from the other movies, but like our conversation really just turned into this Rogue One love fest about how
It's so good.
like there's something about it, and I can watch that movie several times, and I have, and it's insanely rewatchable, and is probably has the greatest space battle sequence since
Oh,
the
absolutely.
Death Star
I have
like
actually
trench.
I've said that out loud before.
Yeah.
And this is my controversial opinion that I will gladly take all the shit for. It might be my favorite Star Wars movie. And
Yeah,
like
I could see that. Yeah.
I always say it's tied with Empire, but
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
it
Mm-hmm.
might be my favorite.
Yeah.
Um
And see, what's interesting about Rogue One is it takes a lot of elements of like, we have to show where the Death Star comes from. We have to show someone getting the Death Star plans. We have to show the Tantive 4 riding off into the sunset, as it were, the space sunset, as it were. We have to, well, they didn't have to bring Darth Vader in, but like there was things that they had to do, and this movie does it so much. It weaves that so much better than Solo,
yeah.
which again I feel is a product of its troubled production. So yeah, my first reaction coming out of it was like, yeah, it was fine,
Yeah.
for what it was, for what it set out to do, which was tell the origin story for anything connected to Han Solo. It did it just it did it fine.
Yeah, that was also my first impression. And
Yeah.
before we get on to like further viewings,
Mm-hmm.
like initial first impressions, like how did you feel about the cast? Because I was actually super impressed by the cast the first time I saw them.
I enjoy Amelia Clark very much.
Yeah.
It's kind of sad that like she's like the whole ending of Game of Thrones, and like
Yeah.
kind of gets put into these roles where, like, I mean, I didn't see the dramatic role she was in with General Hux, based off the Jojo Moyes book Me Before You. I didn't see that, but like I enjoy her as a performer, and I like I thought she did a great job. I thought her character was a little strange, like a little kind of, predictable.
Mm-hmm.
Her costumes were amazing, especially when she comes out of the
Yeah.
Falcon on Kessel.
Oh yeah.
That little Lando cloak on her is good. Um, I really enjoyed Woody Harrelson,
Oh, he's great. Like
and
Beckett is as a character and as an actor, he is
yes,
very good.
and like it's weird because every time I say that, I feel like I surprise myself when that's not the case. Because Woody Harrelson's a great actor. I loved
Yeah.
him. I loved him in Cheers. I finally watched the first season of True Detective, and despite his character being a total scumbag, I thought Woody Harrelson was brilliant.
Yeah.
And like coming out of the movie, it was like I wish the movie was about Beck.
I
Like
mean,
I wish
kind of is.
I wish the movie ended with him meeting with Han Solo, and
Yeah, I would
or
like to
like
see
kind of,
more of Beckett in the Star Wars universe, like
yeah,
his history.
yeah, because it would have been like he has perfect bounty hunter swagger.
Yeah,
um and
he feels
his
like someone who's lived in that world a while, and like how they
yes,
always talk about the old Star Wars trilogy, how it feels like a lived-in universe. He feels
yes,
like somebody who has lived in this universe.
and he feels that more than any other character.
Yeah,
There's just something about his performance, that, like, again, if this movie would have ended where he brokers the deal with him and Jabba to deliver the spice, the doomed shipment of spice, like
yeah,
that would have been like the equivalent of Darth Vader showing up at Rogue One. and what's the thing that they call where they use AI to superimpose the
Oh, a
actors.
deep fake
Deep
or
fake.
whatever.
Thank you. Gosh. Yeah. Show a deep faked young Harrison Ford at the end of the movie. Like that would have been great. But
So have you seen when they cast Alden Ehrenreich as Han Solo that somebody photoshopped his face onto one of the New Hope like
mm-hmm,
promo shots and they were almost identical?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Like that kind of blew me away.
Yeah. And like I feel bad for the act. Like I thought the actor who played Han Solo like did the best he could, but
It's
it's
heavy shoes to step in.
it's very heavy because it's not Harrison Ford, and
Yeah.
everybody equates Han Solo with Harrison Ford.
I'll say it
Mighty
though,
mighty big
man.
shoes to fill, but
Every
he does a good
time
job.
every time I watch this movie, I like him more and more.
Mm-hmm,
Like I
mm-hmm,
think he's really good. And like out of like in Donald Glover, I think most people really love him as Lando.
sure, yeah,
I do, but I do think he's, and I said this about Margot Robbie in Suicide Squad, that I feel like they're 90% there in this
yeah,
one, and
yeah.
that like in another one they probably would have nailed it, which Margot Robbie did in Birds of Prey. I thought she was Harley Quinn in Birds of Prey versus in
Mm-hmm,
Suicide Squad. She was like, she's like almost there. And
mm-hmm,
same thing with Donald Glover here is like most of the time he's great. He has a
mm-hmm.
couple line deliveries that just come off incredibly cheesy and like he's doing an impression, but I
Yes,
feel like he would have ironed it out by the next time.
yeah, yeah.
I hope
I
there is
agree.
a next time for both of these guys. I think there's a rumor though, like Disney Plus, they might do
Mm,
more with these, and like I know they were talking about a Lando show.
mm-hmm,
I don't
mm-hmm.
know if there's any talk about bringing Alden Ehrenreich back, but I would honestly like to see him get another shot.
Yeah, yeah. And I think if you let him do it and remove the weight off of his shoulders for that role,
Yeah.
I think he could do real well. Also, I mean, at the end of the day, let's face it, if you have a good writer, not saying Ron Howard's a bad director, but if you had
If
this
he
as a
was in it from the
solid,
beginning and it was like his vision.
yes, if this was a solid, untroubled project from the beginning, like it would do well either in theater or Disney Plus.
Yeah.
Either way.
And there is like one moment in this movie I think has to be left over from the Lord and Miller version. And it's
Mm-hmm.
when they're playing the Pazak game and
Mm-hmm.
you see that alien like bite off all of his fingernails.
Yeah.
It's just such a cartoony scene. I'm like, oh, that has to be something they just
Mm-hmm.
couldn't shoot
Mm-hmm.
around or get rid of.
And like I struggle to think what a Han Solo movie for them would look like. I mean, looking at Lego Batman, looking at the Lego movies, like I'd be really interested to see like what their vision was that made Disney panic and say we can't do this.
Yeah, and like my
Um,
impression has always been that the script wasn't that different. It's just they reshot everything with like a different tone. Like they
mm-hmm.
just, hey, read the lines differently, kind of present it differently.
Yeah.
And that the Lord and Miller version was just like a little more silly, but like the events of the movie, I'm pretty sure were the same. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
obviously we don't know, but
Right.
that's always been what I've heard.
Right. But yeah, I mean, it just at the end of the day for that first viewing, it just kind of felt like it was a generic heist movie tied around a not so solid origin story that was just so by the numbers. It was almost boring. It was
Yeah.
almost boring. Um, and like not only whether you're a Star Wars fan and knew kind of like how the whole Millennium Falcon changed hands things to begin with, like I think even if you didn't know that stuff, I think it would just be, you would find that the movie is just so by the numbers that it's kind of afraid to like strike out on its own. And again, I feel that's largely become, it's like, oh shoot, we have to reshoot this entire movie
Yeah.
and Disney's only giving us like 2 months to do it. We have to do it now. So,
Yeah.
you know,
In terms of the larger conversation of Disney and Star Wars, they definitely rushed. The idea of doing one every year was ambitious, and I mean, it's impossible to deny how they bumbled 7, 8, 9.
Oh yeah,
Like I really enjoy 7 for what it is. I'm like, oh,
sure.
that is a fun Star Wars movie. And
Yes,
honestly, the lightsaber battle in the forest is one of my favorite in the entire
yes,
franchise.
yes.
The Last Jedi, I love it so
hmm
much. Like
hmm
it is, and it's cliche to say it at this point just because it challenged what a Star Wars movie can be, and
Yeah,
it is one of the most beautiful movies just to look at. In
yeah.
fact, the Blu-ray has a special feature that I wish every movie had, which is it just plays the movie with only the score,
Oh, nice.
and
That's
that is
cool.
awesome. And like
Nice.
that is a perfect movie for something like that.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And like
Um, yeah,
the
and like I really liked how it like, again, like some things work better than others, but it kind of challenged like de facto kind of Star Wars-y stuff. I mean, the big thing, of course, being the Jedi. And kind of, as much as Mark Hamill disagreed with how the character was done, how Luke pretty much just kind of calls him out, as everybody has
yeah.
been doing from the beginning. Like, I was reading the other day, someone was positing a fan theory that Mace Windu was also a Sith and was in league with Palpatine to kind of explain his actions,
Yeah.
by like preventing Anakin from being trained, or like putting on the council but not making a master and all that stuff. And like, no, I think at the end of the day, it's just the Jedi were arrogant,
Yeah,
and
they were full of hubris. Like,
yeah, and finally someone is calling them out, and
yeah,
that part was amazing. That's like Knights of the Old Republic stuff.
yeah. Like Knights of the Old Republic 2 is so good at
Yes.
like looking at the gray areas in Star
Yeah.
Wars.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, The Last Jedi did that pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
then I know I'm pretty sure I saw that you read this, but you read or at least watched some video on like the Colin Trevorrow episode 9, right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Like such a lost opportunity,
Very
because
much.
I covered that script on my previous podcast, which, hey, you can find in the stream if you look for it.
Hey.
And it was it wasn't there 100%, and obviously
Mm-hmm.
would have needed rewrites from after Carrie Fisher had passed.
Right.
But like it felt like a sequel to the last movie, at least.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I'll honestly say The Rise of Skywalker is the only Star Wars movie I think is bad. Just straight up, like I do not like it.
Yeah. No, I don't want to derail this too much away from Solo, but yeah, absolutely agree. I walked out of that movie angry,
Yeah.
and I
have a complicated history with that one. It took 3 watches to finally settle on it.
Why do you do things to yourself like that? I only saw it once and I've never seen it again.
Okay, well,
here's the closest I've gone to seeing it a second time was sitting through Star Tours when they were doing the tie-in where you light speed into like the ridiculous battle over Exegol.
Yeah.
But
the
like,
worst
yeah,
name for a planet.
I have not seen that movie since, and I don't want to, because it's that bad.
Yeah, there's like 1 or 2 moments that I'm like I'm okay with some of these moments, but so like the first time I saw it, I walked out and I was like that was okay, I think. And then I saw it like that weekend because my brother-in-law wanted to see it and didn't have anyone to go with. And so I went with him. I was like, okay, yeah, I'll go see it again. And I was like, it's, I think it's okay. Maybe a little more on the second time. And then I did the marathon. I was like, okay, well, now when it's out on Blu-ray, I watched all 3. And watching it after The Last Jedi, I'm just like, oh my God, what was I thinking? Like, this is it feels like a movie is missing. Like, it's just so bad.
Yeah, well, that's the problem when you have a movie that's acting as an apology for the last one and has to
and catering to a fan base that they should have just ignored.
I was talking with Jonathan, Jonathan Miley from Dark Station, and we were going back and forth, and like, we found it just both shocking that somehow J.J. Abrams made 3 movies in 1 movie.
Yeah. It's insane to think the same guy made The Force Awakens, because The Force Awakens is so fun, even though it is, it is just like a New Hope.
Despite being derivative as fuck, it's a fun movie. It's
and it
really
has
fun.
interesting ideas. It does interesting stuff,
And
and
it has amazing cinematography.
yeah,
Like I can think of two of my favorite shots just right off the top of my head is the whole like General Hux Star Killer base speech.
yeah,
How that is shot, just it's all this white and dark colors within the splashes of red of the First Order flags.
yeah.
And then the X-Wings showing up on
Oh my
Takadana,
god.
which, to be fair, it is impossible to have an ugly camera view of an X-Wing.
Yeah. Same. I would say the same thing with the Millennium Falcon.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, but like, so when this one, was kind of coming out, I definitely feel like it was a little bit of burnout because we were so
Mm-hmm.
close to
Mm-hmm.
Last Jedi, and the baggage of being Han Solo, which is
Yes.
why I was glad I saw it way after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think my first viewing initially, I enjoyed it more than most people,
Mm-hmm.
but then it kind of became a movie I just decided to throw on.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
Mm-hmm.
we were talking before the show. This was the fifth time I've seen this movie. And it's because it will just be a movie where if I'm playing a game or something, I'll just throw on my iPad.
Sure. Yeah.
And like I've come to understand why I like it so much. Because I do think it has a myriad of problems. And the biggest issue is that it literally treats every aspect of Han Solo with such reverence that it just
Yeah.
really doesn't need. Like, I don't need to see where the dice came from. I don't
Right.
need to see how he got his blaster. Like,
Right. Yeah.
I can't remember who made this joke, but like, oh, it's Han Solo's Accessories, the movie.
Yes.
And like, it's so unnecessary. Like,
Yeah.
I am completely bought in on this guy as Han Solo. Like, especially now
Mhm.
that I've seen it so many times, like, no, I think he does a great job. I think he's fun. I think he's
Yeah.
charismatic as hell. I think he's
Yeah.
funny. Like, the movie can be funny.
It's funny, for as much as they're trying to prop him up as a young Harrison Ford, like I see more of that young, like, inner space era Dennis Quaid that I totally got into.
I
um
could see that.
because like he's got that same level of smarm, but he's also very charming.
Yeah.
And like he does that well. He is a charming fellow. And like he knows to kind of when to kind of play it a little serious, but like he looks like, if nothing else, it looks like he's having fun. Like he's
Yeah.
probably the only one who's really enjoying himself. And good on him,
I think
bless
him and
him for
Woody
that.
Harrelson were having a great time.
Yeah, yeah. um it's it's like, what was it, there was an actor on a Star Wars movie that, like, they said that every time they were shooting with the lightsabers they were making the sound effects. And it's like, you don't have to do that.
Yeah. I
But
think it was
it's
Hayden
like,
Christensen said that.
yes, yeah.
And then there's that scene in Last Jedi where Laura Dern is like doing the pew pew noise, and
Yeah,
they
yeah.
kind of just left it in there, and you can still see it.
But yeah, and like, so I let some time pass with it. And I just decided to start what I forget if maybe it was just on, we've in the before COVID, we would do Disney cruises. And one of the enjoyable perks of being on a Disney branded cruise is that your in-room television, there's a separate station that plays all of the animated Disney movies, all of the live action Disney movies, all of the Marvel movies, and then all the Star Wars movies. And they just have them all on rotation 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
And I happened to catch it when they were showing Solo, just kind of had some downtime in our room. And just, it's like, well,
Sure, why not?
they're showing Oliver and Company and the Apple Dumpling Gang. I'll go ahead and watch Solo.
Yeah.
And like, I just kind of left the baggage, left all of its baggage at the door, and found that I really had fun with it. And like, I was finding
really
things
fun
that I really liked. It's a beyond it being an origin story, it's a heist movie, and you gotta love heist movies. Those are always so fun. And like, it's the aesthetic is great.
It feels right out of that like original trilogy.
It does. I mean, it's not, it doesn't have that level of lived in grit as Rogue One, but
Yeah.
like it still has a really good sense of place. It was really exciting to see Kessel for the first time.
Yeah, I legitimately
you know,
enjoy the Kessel stuff. Like it's so
yeah.
fun.
And we got to see more Wookiees, which we haven't seen since episode 3. And like in a thing that kind of gives Chewie's role in that movie some gravitas. It's and yeah, it's just, and again, Woody Harrelson, like I didn't, if I didn't have a strong opinion of him the first time I saw it, like going forward now, if I'm watching Solo, I'm watching it because of Woody Harrelson.
Yeah, like this viewing in particular for this podcast, I really walked away from, man, I want more of him. Like if they put him into a cartoon or like if they a comic book, like I want to know more about Beckett. Like I think he was a fun character. And for this movie, for me, it's a lot of the little moments I like. Like I like the way Han kind of forces his way into their crew by just being a pest and constantly showing up, where it's just like, well, I'll be damned. Like, let's just bring him with us and see what happens type thing. Like, I love that stuff. Like, I do love when him and Chewie meet for the first time and he speaks like the Wookiee language. Like it's kind of ridiculous, but it was funny. And like, just, it's like, oh, you speak it? He's just like, yeah, a little.
And there's a lot of, it's just kind of like the little things. And I say it because with have you made your way down to, probably Walt Disney World is probably closer for you, but
I have never been to a Disney park.
Okay.
We were actually planning. So me and my wife recently, I know you saw already. Me and my wife recently announced that we were pregnant.
Oh, congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. But before that happened, we were planning a trip to Anaheim to go, because specifically to go to the Star Wars world.
Right. Yeah.
That was a consideration for our anniversary in October. But things have changed. My goal is to get there and to get a lightsaber. That's all I'm trying to do.
Nice. Well, and you'll want to do the Smuggler's Run, right? Because you're piloting the Millennium Falcon specifically. Specifically looking for coaxium. So it's like, okay, there's they put in a little and it's weird because so the Millennium Falcon ride has a connection to the Solo movie in that you're doing a run for coaxium. But Solo has a Galaxy's Edge tie-in, and if you're not aware of it, it's easy to miss, but it's when Beckett and Han go to I forget Paul Bettany's
Dryden Voss.
They go to his ship, which I love his ship, by the way. And they meet Kira, and she happens to be talking to one of the patrons, just like in passing, and says, oh, make sure to keep Doc Ondar happy. Well, Doc Ondar is an Ithorian who has a shop in Galaxy's Edge where you can buy, it's Doc Ondar's Den of Antiquities. And at the park, that's where you can go to buy like the legacy lightsabers, holocrons, and like all these kind of doodads and stuff.
I do have some liar's dice somewhere that someone brought, or not liar's dice, but Watto's dice somewhere. That's one of my coworkers goes all the time, and she brought me some as a souvenir. So some synergy going on there, but in a way that's not like, wink wink, oh, by the way, when you're done with the movie, throw away your empty popcorn containers and go to Disneyland. And like that's what I mean by little moments. And two things to say about that. Another one is the fact that they put Terrace Kasi
oh my god, yes,
something that is canon in this movie, which if you don't know what that is, there was a Star Wars fighting game for the PlayStation called Masters of Terrace Kasi, and it's awful, it's great. I can't remember if I had a audible reaction, but I know I would have been the only person in the theater to make that connection. But I say you tweeted in all caps when you walked. You must have tweeted, because I feel like I saw that from you on Twitter. Just Terrace Kasi is canon in like all caps.
Oh my god, the game was awful. But yeah, just like a lot of little things. And of course the the Han and Lando stuff.
Yeah, Lando recording his like memoirs. This is funny.
Yeah. And I don't care. I honestly do not care what people say. This is one of the situations. I posted that DuckTales meme where the lady duck is holding her hand over the glass that says, you know, me and the person about to pour the beverage is the fandom and their bullshit or whatever.
Yeah.
I loved L3.
I
feminist robot, the feminist droid. For some reason, that just tickled me enough to be like, you know what? L3 rules.
I'm a little on the fence about it. Like I'm not like, oh, the way some people are about it, because I do think the droid revolution on Kessel is hilarious and awesome. But like she is really heavy-handed when they first introduce her, to the point where I was like, okay, I get it. Like, let's tone it down a little bit. But I like how she like stumbles across her purpose of like, oh, I don't know, why don't you just go free your friends, and then starts this little robot revolution. And like, I love how that's just kind of happening in the background of Kessel.
The moment I love between her and Lando the most is they're getting into the cockpit of the Falcon, and she's kind of trouble sitting down.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm gonna need you to do that thing for me again. And he's like, ugh.
Yeah.
Because it's like, okay, what weird like droid sexual thing is going on?
There are heavy implications that they are.
I am 100% into knowing how this all works.
Yeah.
But I wonder if that's one of the Lord and Miller holdovers.
See, that's another thing I think, is when they say that they use the same script. I think that is the case.
Yeah. If nothing else though, like I like the construction of the droid, and that's
she's really cool looking.
Something they could easily have done in CG, but they did it old school where they I'm sure they just had like a puppeteer in a green jumpsuit, with connected to ambulatoring, all the limbs and stuff like that. But it looks, it's for as much as a CG fest as the prequel films were, it's kind of nice to go back to that sort of old school puppeteering.
L3 is a really good looking design. And honestly, I can't believe we haven't talked that much about him, but Paul Bettany in this movie, I actually super enjoy. So that is one of the changes, is that in the Lord and Miller version, it was a different actor as a CG alien, but they couldn't get him back for reshoots, so they just had to recast.
Right.
And like, one of my favorite things about this movie is the finale just takes place in an office. Like, it's just people like in an office, like trying to kill each other. And I love how low key that is. Like,
and
the stakes for this movie are very low.
It's the classic, like, okay, we've done this heist, we got to bring the goods. And just like, it's an effective set piece because it works within the nature of what they're all doing. And so of course you got to have the standoff and the dudes, high rise, top floor, luxury suites. It makes perfect sense. But yeah.
I also love, like, because Paul Bettany's like just a charming motherfucker. And having him be charming in the sense that, oh, he's like sweet talking you with a blade to your throat.
Right. Yeah. He'll sweet talk you while he's cutting your throat.
Yeah. Like, I love his like fake care for like, oh, I heard he died. Like, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
And like he's totally just putting it on. But at the same time, it's like, so you got my money? Like,
right. Yeah.
He's really fun. Like, he's just the key word for this movie is just fun. I'm going to like take a shot every time I say it. But no, like I pray for the day we get a Star Wars movie that does not feature a lightsaber at all. Like,
that'd be nice.
This movie made me so excited for Mandalorian for a long time didn't have. I mean, but they did, like, by season 2, which it's great and they incorporate it well. But like, yeah, the whole first season of that show, it had a Jedi child but no lightsaber.
Right.
And I want a Star Wars movie that's just people with guns or whatever. Like,
well, and
this is the closest we got.
that's why some of the best episodes of the Clone Wars are when it's just the clones.
Yeah.
And I remember being at a presentation for God, I think it was Wizard World when they were still in LA. But my brother and I, we got to go see a panel for Clone Wars that was that Dave Filoni was there, and just kind of like pitching this show. Basically, that's kind of what they were trying to sell the show.
This is before the show had aired.
This is before it aired, yeah. And they were saying,
Is this
"Oh,
before
yeah,
the movie then?"
this was before anything came out for it. And like they were quick to say, it's like, oh yeah, we want to really emphasize the clones. The show is this, our vision is to have the clones. And then of course, hindsight being 2020, there's sure is a hell of a lot of Jedi in it. But like first season alone, there is an episode, it's an early episode. I want to say it's maybe the second or third, but it's just it's an episode with 5 clone rookies at a listening station that get invaded by droid commandos, and they have to single-handedly fight them off because they're like at the most crucial listening point for the Republic. And no lightsabers, no Jedi, it's just clones, and they're putting their Mandalorian training to use.
Yeah, and honestly, if you pay attention to that show, those 5 clones continue to the end of the series, and one of them is now a main character in the Bad Batch.
That's right.
Like, these are clones. They're all the same person, but them. Like, I know who Fives is. Like, I know who Rex and Cody are. Like, some of these clones become better character. I would also throw out the Camino episodes. I think it's the opening 3 episodes of season 3. I think. Where they attack Camino, and like you get a flashback to those same clones in training, and then the next episode is like a time jump where it's post that listening sessions episode, and then they are now like kind of elite troopers, and you see their progression throughout the show. Like Clone Wars is it took me a minute, but I am so converted. It's like one of my favorite Star Wars things.
It is. It's really good. And like by the end of that show, it gets, because like
that final season should be a movie.
The first couple seasons, it's like it's clear, kind of like, they're kind of catering to a kid audience, and
they're figuring it out.
I saw the Clone Wars movie in the theater and was the oldest one there. So it was kind of clear that they were targeting an audience. But by the end of not just like the where they got to go back, but just like by the end of the seasons before the show got canceled, I mean, we're darker and a little heavier there. And then you get to that last season where like, gosh, there's a lot of bad filler in it. But like those last 3 episodes, with the conclusion of the Mandalore line and then to the Order 66 stuff is just like, and then go watch that and then watch episode 3 again, because after you've gone through like 7 or 8 seasons of not only just seeing Obi-Wan and Anakin like develop their relationship, but it makes seeing Cody like turn around and betray Obi-Wan all the more like gutting.
I totally felt that too. Like after watching the show, because I rewatched the prequels recently, and it was just like, oh, it just hits different now. And and I know we keep getting off topic, but it's all Star Wars.
It's all connected. Star Wars is a flat circle.
But I mean, we're talking about how that is a thing Disney, as much as they fumbled this first like group of movies, and they've made all these new announcements, and hopefully they're gonna tie it in a lot better, which it looks like they're on the right track.
You've got Dave Filoni in
he got promoted.
He knows his shit, so I feel like things are going to be, he's a man with a plan.
While Kathleen Kennedy is always the head of the ship, Dave Filoni is absolutely the one that should be the Kevin Feige of Star Wars.
Yes, absolutely.
Like
absolutely.
He is George Lucas's protege. Everything he has touched that is Star Wars is the best thing of Star Wars since George Lucas touched it.
Yes.
So, and like I saw people compare this movie to be like, oh, that was the best episode of Rebels I've ever seen.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, all right.
And I can totally, as
I
somebody who's recently been going through Rebels for the first time, I can see that.
Yes. That is Solo is definitely a late season episode of Rebels. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
After the show finally found its footing, and yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, I came to Rebels super late. I'm actually still in the last season, but it's very good. And I get that feeling like watching this, like having now actually seen Rebels because I didn't see it when the movie came out.
Mhm.
I was like, oh yeah, like this, they feel like they are cut from the same cloth.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is just held back by those little things of like, oh well, we got to explain this and this and that. Like
Yeah.
I will give them so much credit for restraining from putting Boba Fett in this movie.
Right. Yeah. It almost kind of feels that like you can see. I don't know. I don't think Ron Howard would be up, but someone on set, like literally, they're pulling on their collar like a dog who's like barking and wants to go after the cat that it sees across the street. It's
Yeah.
like Boba Fett. We gotta put Boba Fett in. Come on, Boba Fett. And it's like no, we're not doing that. Instead, we're gonna put Darth Maul in it.
Yeah. Which again, after having watched Rebels, that hits a little different like on this viewing because this is the first time I watched it since starting Rebels. I was like, okay, like I appreciate him there a little more now, but it's still like I wish he didn't do it.
I wish it didn't do it because I never thought I would come like it would come to this. Now that I'm making this realization now, I made it when he popped up in Clone Wars, was like I'm actually sick of Darth Maul. Like I think like I remember feeling very gypped at the end of Phantom Menace
Yeah.
when you had this character who was like you've never seen a Star Wars character like this before, totally hyped up, merchandise everywhere, and he dies at the end of the first movie.
And has like 2 lines in the entire movie.
Yeah, but you know, at the end of the day, he served a purpose. You know, he became like he was the foot in the door for the Sith to come back. Blah 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 blah. But like to not only see him come back in Clone Wars, but to know that he had a brother with the most ridiculous name ever, Savage Opress.
Yeah.
And then not only survive all of that, in fact, surviving a battle with Palpatine,
which is great.
Yeah,
it
but
is
like,
cool looking.
Yeah, it's cool looking, sure. But like to have him then come back in Rebels, and I'm just like
I prefer
already.
him. I prefer his appearance in Rebels over Clone Wars because you don't have the weight of his brother being there, because they don't bring him into Clone Wars until after they've introduced his brother.
Right.
And I do think they did redeem that character, like by giving him more to do and making him slightly more interesting. But I do like his sudden appearance in Rebels and like, oh, he's kind of crazy at this point, and like he has a goal. And the ultimate encounter with him and Obi-Wan is awesome.
Okay. So that is the one thing I will give Star Wars is if they were all like to have this long game of setting them up with a reunion with Obi-Wan, like that was cool. But the coolest part of it was tossing away all your expectations. You know what Darth Maul is capable of. You know that he's a very athletic fellow. He's very adept at using a double-bladed lightsaber. And you remember their first fight on Naboo, and like that choreographed scene was awesome. It was the equivalent of watching Neo fight Agent Smith. The greatest thing. But like to have it in Rebels where it's just like
it's 3 moves.
It's gonna be 3 swishes and you hitting the ground. And like that was incredible. I will give you that. That is like single-handedly the best Darth Maul moment post Phantom Menace. And with Solo, it was just like, again, by that point, I had not seen Rebels. And so I was already sick of the character. Like I just like, so I kind of rolled my eyes and like, well, this is stupid. And it's stupid because they're obviously trying to set this up for a sequel that, let's face it, is probably not going to happen.
Probably not. I wish it would. Honestly, I do.
You
I would
know,
like to see
now I can see, like, then it was like, this is not going to happen because this movie is not good at all. But now it's like, you know, that's prime material for a Disney Plus thing. If they really need to explore Darth Maul's tenure as the Crimson Dawn boss, then
okay, yeah.
fine.
Do they ever? Is it in Rebels or Clone Wars where he's part of the Crimson Dawn, or is that something that just happens in this movie?
I think that's just something happened in this movie, because
That's what I thought.
For the majority, like, he is by himself in Rebels, and he's just there to, you know, he's Wormtongue. He's just whispering into Ezra's ear.
Yeah. And then they get this like weird connection through some Force stuff, and
yeah. But yeah, so
because that was one thing I couldn't remember if they ever established that he was part of the Crimson Dawn.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that must just be something they were planning on connecting later than just
sequence, right? Too. That's not something, like, if you're a Star Wars person, you wouldn't necessarily know to stick around to watch.
I don't think it wasn't. There was it's just like after, because he shows up after like Han goes after Beckett. Like she's in the office and she's like, oh, you know, I'll be right with you. And then she goes over to the computer and pulls him up on the hologram.
Weird. For some reason, I was thinking that was like an end credit.
Yeah, no, it's like right there in that scene. And that's the last time we see her. She just like flies off and we don't see her again. Which gives us the moment where Han shoots first.
That's right. That's right.
Which is, again, like a great little, like, I actually really enjoy the character development of Han in this movie. Like, I like the moments where it's like we are seeing him kind of become the guy he is at the beginning of A New Hope. But there's those little moments where she's like, hey, you know, you think you're this, but you're the good guy. Like, you're always the good guy. And he's like, no, I'm not the good guy. But like, hey, we know in the future he is the good guy.
Yeah. And like stuff like that works out great, and it's not as heavy-handed as some of the other big things, like but
give me that versus somebody tossing him his blaster, you know.
Right. Yeah. Or, you know, I don't know. I'll always like as far as like character moments go, like I think Han and Chewie really settle into their relationship really well. I think that progresses really well. And
all the stuff
for
with them
me
is like my favorite.
Yeah, and for me, the big payoff is that they become so chummy enough that I love. They go back to Lando to play the Sabak game, and you know he's showing Chewie his cards, and like,
I just noticed that in this time, like this time. Yeah,
I love that.
I also love the moment when they first get picked up on the ship, and then he steps in the shower with them, and he's like, "Oh, we couldn't do this separately." The Han and Chewie stuff is easily the best handled stuff in the movie.
Yes. Yeah.
I also would like to point out that apparently Han is just some bachelor slob, because look how dirty the Millennium Falcon is in A New Hope, and how clean it is in this movie.
And like, what were they doing?
Like they've just never cleaned that thing since he won it.
Does Chewie just like, you know, like if is he like Baloo? Does he just like scratch his back on the interior hull of the Falcon and just kind of it's like what? Because man,
like it is so white on those panels in this movie, and then you look at the older ones and they're just all brown.
And it's like the one thing I can never get a grasp on, I like to think I know my stuff when it comes to Star Wars, but the one thing I can never really grasp is the timeline, like the number of years between like Solo and A New Hope. You can't figure it's that many years.
It can't be that long.
But so then it's like, what could they possibly have done to take this pristine, gorgeous interior of a ship and dirty it up that much in that space of time?
Yeah, that was like one of the first things I noticed watching this movie is like, oh, look how clean the fucking Falcon is.
Right. And you know, it's the Millennium Falcon, right, too. It's fine because it's all dirty and everything like that. And you know, so yeah, it's just like, God, what happened?
Yeah. I'm trying to see if because I pulled up a timeline here, but I don't know if it's a legacy timeline or not. I'm trying to see if it says how many years before the Battle of Yavin, because that's our AD of Star Wars.
Yeah.
Okay, Imperial era. I'm not seeing it. Dark Times. I guess I can just search Solo. The Dragon Void Raid. I don't know what that is. I think this might be a legacy timeline. So, but yeah, like I mean, it's definitely believable that it's like, let's say even if it was like 5 or 10 years, like Alden Ehrenreich, I could see him being like a 5 or 10 year younger Han Solo.
Right. Let's see. I have popped up a Vanity Fair article. Timelines can get baffling, but no, Solo Star Wars story does in fact take place
I got
roughly
it.
2 decades after the Phantom Menace and around 11 to 14 years between A New Hope. Okay.
Yeah, I got Solo, A Star Wars Story, 13 to 10 years BBY. Which
Okay,
is
so yeah,
Battle
that
of
is
Yavin.
then 11 to 14 years is plenty of time to dirty up Lando's ship.
Yeah, if you think about owning a car for that long, like
Yeah, yeah. How many Space McDonald's bags are just hiding behind the
oh
scenes?
god, yeah. But still, like Lando probably had that ship for a while. Granted,
Yeah.
I love all the stuff like she's using one of his capes to put out a fire, and he's like, "That's a designer piece." Like,
and just the great like another small moment that if you're watching these movies in chronological order, the payoff is in Empire Strikes Back, but when they plug L3 into the computer, the Falcon's computer,
yeah,
it then kind of gives a little added extra weight to when C-3PO is trying to work on the computer and says this machine has a very peculiar dialect.
oh yeah.
That's
I was
referring to
wondering
L3
if
being in it. Yeah.
that was something I was wondering, and I've never looked into. Is there any kind of reference to that in future films that you could like point to and be like, oh, that's probably because of L3 or whatever?
Yeah, no. I think just if nothing else, it kind of served to kind of connect the bridge to whether they were conscious about it or not. It connects a bridge to an offhand comment from Empire. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't think anything else ever comes close to that.
Yeah,
if at all.
yeah, I was curious about that. But yeah, like I don't know, like I kind of love just throwing this one on. I want more low stakes Star Wars movies. Like Rogue One is so like I love Rogue One because it's like, oh, it's a Star Wars movie that takes it seriously. Like it has funny moments, but like I'm like, that's not so much a kids one versus all the numbered movies are definitely like kind of for kids to varying degrees.
Yeah.
And this one it feels like a fun adventure movie. Like I love there's like so like just kind of individual moments. I love the train heist. I love like the moment of Lando running to L3 and kind of like the camera work in that scene on Kessel. Like it has this fun adventure tone. And something I follow this guy on Twitter. I'm not really sure who he is or why I follow him, but he talks about Star Wars a lot. I think he's just like a journalist guy. But he always talks about the score for this movie. And this was the first time where I kind of watched it since. I was like, oh, I'm gonna super pay attention to the music. And I think the music's really good.
It is.
And I actually think post like or non John Williams Star Wars scores, I think Rogue One is my favorite score. Like I really enjoy the themes for what's her name? Jin.
Which is really funny because like Michael Giacchino only had like 6 weeks to make that score.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh man, it's so good.
Yeah. I mean, it's just one of those things, that again, that movie had a production issues as well. But he knocked it out of the park. And if there's ever a song I need to get myself feel motivated, it's the Guardians of the Wills.
Yeah, it's so good. And so this one, it's a really fun adventure movie score, but it does incorporate what you need. Like you have the Millennium Falcon like theme music in there. Which one of, if we're going to talk about fucking Star Wars songs to throw on, it's The Last Jedi. The moment that gives me goosebumps every single time I watch it is when the Falcon shows up at the end and they fly into the planet and it starts playing that music. I'm just like, oh, every time. Well, every single time.
And another fun thing, apparently, I don't know 100% how accurate it is, but it is now my headcanon. Ryan Johnson put in that scene because he was a fan of Star Tours.
Oh, really?
In the original Star Tours, there's a sequence where you're flying through a comet, and it totally looks like, and the inside of Crate totally looks like the inside of that comet.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I totally agree with you. That's like that's a great musical moment. And I was just listening to the solo soundtrack not too long ago, and my favorite piece of music is the theme for Envis Ness. And you get it in the train heist sequence, and it's just that sort of kind of like alien chanting. It's good. It's really good.
Yeah, I've never listened to this score on its own before. I've only this is literally the first time watching this movie where I was like, oh, I should really pay attention to the music because I've noticed somebody talking about it. And it's really fun. Like, it has its own themes and it uses old music like appropriately. Like we said, the Falcon theme, like when the TIE fighters are coming, it plays like old, like kind of Imperial music. And which actually leads me to another one of my favorite funny moments of the movie is when they're fighting the TIE fighters in the maelstrom and the gun gets blown up and Beckett's just like, and I hurt my thumbs. Like, that feels like a Lord and Miller scene that was possibly left in.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I guess my biggest disappointment with this movie is the Kessel Run. Is I'm kind of just like, it's fine. It doesn't come off as this big, crazy, epic moment, which I think kind of works in the movie's favor.
And I think, they build it up. They build it up as this like, secret smuggling space lane. And through that whole sequence, you're like, why would anybody want to do this? Like, for as dangerous as they've made the sound and look, like, why would anybody bother?
And it's also implied he's the only one to do it because he's kind of doing it like an idiot. Like, he's like, oh, we'll just cut through here and it'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly. But again, the payoff to that is, we've been lusting after the Millennium Falcon up to this point, and then when it gets to its planet, it's just it's a total trash heap.
Yeah.
And it's both funny and sad because it's like we've had this like top of the line ship and now it's just this piece of junk, and it can barely fly away when Lando just ditches everybody.
Yeah. And I do wonder how Star Wars fans, okay, so for one, the fact that the Falcon was always like, it is the revered ship of Star Wars, but they always referred to it as a piece of junk. And now we see it in its most pristine condition and how it becomes a piece of junk.
Right. Yeah.
And that's like that. So I always wonder how Star Wars fans feel about that. But also, a moment that I think is actually great, but I wonder if it pisses people off, is the fact that he is actually lying about the Kessel Run. Like when he's like, yeah, just made the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs, and then Chewie like growls like, oh, well, if you round down, like, to me that is actually like a perfect Han Solo thing. Like, oh no, he would be lying about this.
Yeah, that's funny because I didn't pick up any backlash on it, but to be fair, I wasn't really paying attention to after I had seen it. So I mean, it's highly possible that Star Wars, the fandom, had found something else to be angry about.
Like, oh, Han Solo's better than that, man. Like, no, he's a
why would they do that to him?
Yeah, he's a fucking scoundrel, man. That's the whole point. Like, that is the most Han Solo moment in the movie.
Exactly.
No, like, it's that kind of stuff.
Wait till they find out when he cheats at cards to win the Millennium Falcon.
Yeah. Yeah, like that all checks out to me as that character.
Yeah. He's a braggart, and he's a cocky little shit, and cocky little shits are gonna cocky little shit. So there you go.
Yeah. I never really understood the hate that so many people gave this movie. And I do think it is one that is better on repeat viewings.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why we kind of came around on it.
Once I learned to not care.
Yeah.
To a degree where I have to go on Twitter and yell at people and drive actors and actresses off of social media.
Ugh.
When I realized I didn't care, it was so much fun. Now,
Yeah.
I will always care about Rise of Skywalker because I think that is a fundamentally broken movie. But
It's
when
a
it comes
very
to
different story.
Solo, that's a very different story. But yeah, when it comes to Solo, when I just didn't care, I had the time. I really enjoyed watching it.
Yeah, it's something I've been working on, and I've said this many times before, but the movie that broke me on like that kind of caring was the reboot for RoboCop,
Oh,
because that movie's okay. Like
yeah.
it's not great, but it's fun. And if it was on
Mhm.
TV, I wouldn't, like, I own it on Blu-ray, but again, I buy everything.
Mhm.
If it was on TV, I wouldn't turn it off. But RoboCop was very much like my thing.
Mhm.
And when they're remaking it, I was like, like, like everybody
Yeah.
else. But then I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna watch it. And I enjoyed it. And I was like, you know what? It doesn't take away
Mhm.
from the original. Like, hey, the original Star Wars trilogy, always gonna be there.
Right. Yeah. Jeremy, I respect you and I think that you are a wonderful person. But I saw that in the theater, and the entire time I was thinking about, like, can I get away with pulling out my phone and watching my digital copy of the original RoboCop instead?
They are
Because yeah,
very different movies.
they are very different movies, and it lacks the Verhoeven snark that I love oh so much. I will say though that I really did like the of the new robot, the compliment sandwich. I did like Sam Jackson as the kind of talking head,
Yeah.
and I liked the actual RoboCop suit. I thought that suit was
Oh
actually
yeah,
pretty cool.
I'm super stoked for that new Suicide Squad movie, because I want Joel Kinnaman to get more respect. I think
Mhm.
he's actually pretty fun and stuff. I don't know if you watched that Netflix show that he was in the first season of. What was that sci-fi show? Oh no. I gotta look this up, because he was really great in it. And I know for season 2 they replaced him with what's his name? Falcon from Marvel. Anthony Mackie?
Sebastian Stan. Oh, okay.
Oh, Altered Carbon. Um
Oh,
yeah,
yeah. I think I saw like one episode of that.
yeah, it's a really trippy show. I
Mhm.
super enjoyed the first season, and honestly the first season is standalone enough that you could just pretend like the second season doesn't exist.
Sure. Yeah.
But he's really great in that. And like he thought he was like fine in the first Suicide Squad, but like I
Mhm.
enjoyed him as RoboCop, and I'm looking forward to seeing what James Gunn does with him.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that is not Solo.
That is not,
but
as much as I could totally talk about RoboCop for an entire day. That is not Solo.
oh yeah. But it's the same. These are things of, it's managing expectations, like
Yes.
understanding what you're getting into,
Yes.
and just like letting your fandom not dictate how you should feel about something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think Solo is a lot of fun. I think it has its issues, and I truly believe, I'm trying to think of what point in the movie that it turns for me, because I think pretty much the train heist on, I think the movie's great.
Yeah. I think for me, it's when you get past the ridiculousness of, like, it's probably the first hour where it ends with, hey, what's your name, kid? Han.
Yeah, that
What's
I
your
will.
last name?
That is the worst moment in this movie.
Yeah. After that, that's when I start paying attention, because that's ridiculous. Like, and it just goes to show, like, going back, Last Crusade,
Yeah.
that perfect scene, you lost today, kid, but that doesn't mean you have to like it. And that transition from young to old Indy is perfect. And then you get this. You basically get a really bad Godfather 2 bit where they had to make up a last name because the kid couldn't say it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a series of missteps, but it never trips.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
I would say every chunk of this movie is entertaining to some degree. And
Yes.
I think the
Yeah.
cast does a lot of the heavy lifting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The cast is great. Even though you got like Thandie Newton in there for like 5 minutes, and like Jon Favreau in there for 5 minutes, I would have liked
Mm-hmm.
more of their characters. Like I wish the crew was around more.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like
Because they kill them off really quickly.
Yeah, and they're all really fun. And
Mhm.
I really enjoy Beckett and Han together, and I
Mhm.
like the journey that he takes him on. And like I said, I love that the end of this movie just takes place in an office, and like Beckett being like, no, I like to be the one with the guns, and him like trying to figure out the plot and all that stuff. Like
Mhm. Mhm.
it's Star Wars in a way we hadn't seen before, and it
Mhm.
really makes me want more low stakes Star Wars. Like when they said they were going to do these like standalone movies, I wish they were more standalone than they ended up being.
Right.
But I enjoy those so much because I do feel like I could just throw on Rogue One and I'm not obligated to watch everything else. And I do feel like I
Mhm.
can throw on Solo and I don't have to watch everything else. Like
Mhm.
I want more of that out of my Star Wars.
Yeah. Um and I figure it's like by now, because like the my biggest holdout now, like I'm waiting for one more character to be made into canon. I want Kyle Katarn to show
Yeah.
up, and like Kyle Katarn is so versatile that you can either have him come in as a Jedi, or you can have him ideally come in as him, and you could have had them come in a like a standalone kind of low stakes, you know, movie, and just do something to get that character into this canon, because my god, like that is like the one, like right now I see Star Wars as this big puzzle, and there's one Kyle
Yeah.
Katarn shaped piece that is
They have to
missing.
get there eventually.
They have to. They
Like
have to.
I don't see a world where Kyle Katarn never makes it into a live action Star Wars. I
Exactly.
honestly I think Mandalorian is where he should show
Right.
up.
That would be even perfect. That would be even better. Like, oh my God, that would have been perfect for him to just wedge him right in there.
Yeah.
Because you know, his character, I mean, granted, he originally was the one who stole the Death Star plans, but like that character, like he survived long enough after the, you know, he was in the New Republic books. So I mean, he's
Yeah.
around. So it's not like, you know, he's not like this old person that you're gonna have to worry who's fragile. I mean, he's ready for action. And the day Kyle Katarn is introduced back into the canon will be a day that I will, it was like when Thrawn was introduced for season 3 of Rebels. I
Yeah.
literally jumped out of my seat and punched the air.
That was super, as because those the Thrawn trilogy
Mm-hmm.
is my favorite expanded media thing. I actually have the first
Mm-hmm.
book signed by the author, who's
Nice.
actually from here. Like he's actually from my wife's hometown.
Oh wow.
I found that out recently. He might still live there because he did a convention in Chicago, and I got
Wow.
it signed. So I have the first
Nice.
book signed by him. Yeah, like I did not engage with that stuff as much as you guys did, like the Kyle Katarn stuff. I actually Jedi Academy was my first interaction with any of that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I you know I've been making it a goal to read was it the New Republic series, or
Oh yeah.
I
The High Republic.
no the legacy stuff, the old stuff.
Oh, okay. Good
But
man. Good man.
I also am reading High Republic. I have the first one.
Yeah.
But so you know, all the audiobooks are abridged versions. So unfortunately, if I'm doing audio,
Really?
yeah, so
Oh,
they're all like 8 hours or something like that.
wow.
So which I'm like, that's fine, I guess. If I'm only gonna do audiobooks, that's my only option. I do have some of the actual physical books, but I'm just more audiobooks nowadays.
Hmm.
But I went through the first one, so I'm making my way through. But yeah, like
Yeah.
like out of all the, you know, as we're wrapping up here, so, what is like the thing you are most looking forward to out of like the current announced Star Wars stuff?
Well, I mean, I read the first High Republic book and really didn't care much for it.
Really?
Um, yeah. It's
I'm still pretty early in it, so
yeah, I don't want to really say anything, but like it didn't kind of capture me as well as I was desperately wanting it to, because I haven't really read a really good Star Wars novel. you know, the Thrawn books were okay. The first Thrawn trilogy that Timothy Zahn came back to
You're talking
do
for the Disney era, right?
for the Disney era. Yeah, the first book is good. The third one's pretty good. The second one, not so much. That also reads like an advertisement for Galaxy's Edge. Um,
Yeah, I've
but
avoided most of the Disney era books, to be honest.
yeah, and it's just nothing has been quite as good as the legacy stuff, to be honest. I mean, it's a crime that we don't have Karen Travis writing any more Star Wars books, because her Republic Commando series is probably one of the high watermarks of Star Wars
Really?
novels. Yes.
I'm a big fan of the Darth Bane trilogy.
The Darth Bane books are amazing. That first one reads like an evil Harry Potter book. I love it.
Yeah, I recently re-listened to. Well, I listened to the audiobook for the first time, but I've read that
Mhm.
one multiple times.
Mhm. I've been thinking about maybe wanting to revisit the new Jedi Order series because and see if that's as much as a slog as I thought it was, because that was like 13 books with like offshoot novellas and stuff like that.
Yeah,
But yeah, gosh, I mean, you know, I guess like of the stuff that's out now, it's just Mandalorian has been my jam. If nothing else, because they finally did a Star Wars thing that didn't have well,
until it did.
with the exception of the last season, which I imagine was the only time they did it, the ultimate fan service was, you know, they had a show. You could have a Star Wars show that didn't have a Jedi in it as a main
Yeah.
character. And that was the other thing too. Like, God, Mandalorian season 2 brought in the Dark Troopers. How could you not have
Yeah.
Hal Katarn if you're introducing the Dark
I forgot about that
Troopers?
already.
And but yeah, I think Mandalorian like set like a new high watermark, I think, for quality.
Yeah.
And it was such a, because did season 1 come out on or around or after Rise of Skywalker?
It debuted in December of 2019, which I think is
Okay,
when Rise of
so
Skywalker came out.
yeah, so like that after that first episode, I was like, the rise of what? Like I
Yeah.
completely like I, you know, I don't need to dwell on how much I dislike this movie, because oh my God, here's something that's totally captivating, has all the right people involved. And yeah, I mean,
I keep saying like, oh, I'm gonna go back and rewatch both seasons.
mhm. I still need to go watch The Bad Batch.
Yeah, I haven't watched
Um
any of that yet. I
watch
am
the
super excited for Obi-Wan. Like
Oh yeah, of course.
that is the thing that I am just like on pin, because Ewan McGregor or Obi-Wan is my favorite character in Star Wars.
Mhm,
My
mhm.
cat is named Obi-Wan. And the fact that it's still able to be Ewan McGregor and bringing in Hayden
Yes.
Christensen, like
Yes, yeah.
it is. They did say it's just going to be like one season thing.
Like most of everything that they're doing.
Yeah, like yeah, just give me like a short, but just like a long movie, you know? Yeah,
Yeah.
basically what they're doing with the Marvel
And
stuff.
Deborah Chow is doing it, and her stuff for The Mandalorian
Yeah,
was amazing.
yeah, she had my favorite episode of Mandalorian.
Yeah, so like I have high hopes for that. Um and yeah,
Super
like
stoked for Ahsoka just because we'll probably see Ezra and Thrawn.
yeah.
Which
Um
who's your dream casting for Thrawn?
Benedict Cumberbatch.
That's a good one. I go Jeremy Irons because I want him to be a little older, and like
Ooh.
watching him as in Watchmen.
Yeah,
That really is like, oh no. So it was watching Rebels, like after seeing Rebels and seeing how they portrayed the character, I'm like, oh, like this just feels like it should be Jeremy Irons in live action.
I want to change my answer. Either that or and I just happened to think of it because he was in Discovery, but Star Trek Discovery, but Jason Isaacs. He
Yeah,
might
I
be
could
pretty
see
good.
that.
But like now that you say Jeremy Irons, yeah, I would love to see him in blue makeup and red eyes and
Yeah.
like, you know, black dark navy blue hair. Yeah.
Like name me an
Yeah.
actor who is of like that age, because he would be a little older at that point, and
Mhm.
like isn't just like so evil yet so sophisticated.
Yeah. God, I love Thrawn. That Oh man. Okay, so I again, sorry for the digression, but one of my favorite moments in, I think it's Dark Force Rising. It's the second Thrawn trilogy book,
Yeah,
but
which was my favorite one, I believe.
They're they're doing, I forget who they're fighting, but like one of them decides to like not fire on an escaping ship, and like Thrawn comes up, or it's like Paleon comes up. I was like, what'd you do that for? And the gunner's kind of like, well, I'm gonna die just because, you know, that's what I hear what happens when you don't follow orders
Yeah.
on a ship. And like Thrawn's all like, wait a minute, why did you do that? And like he's like, well, I did it because blah 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 blah. And he says, that's right, very good. And it's like, you know, I'm not, you know, I'm not Darth Vader. I'm not going
Yeah.
to kill anybody who, you know, who acts independently. You know, as long as they act intelligently, I will not strike them for acting
God, he's such a
independently. And
good
I'm
character.
like that's awesome. Like that's a character that inspires fear and leadership. You know, yeah,
Yeah,
Thrawn rules.
he's great. Yeah, but anything else to say about Solo?
No, it's again, it's one of those things that, you know, just leave your Star Wars baggage at the door, and like for the things that you don't like, look around it and you will find things that you will enjoy. Like again, you know, it's not the greatest, it's not the most well constructed origin story, but the ancillary characters in it are amazing.
Yeah,
Woody
it's
Harrelson being the top of the heap.
absolutely, it is. It's one of those things where like, hey, you can't decide if this movie exists or not. It
Mm-hmm.
exists,
Yeah,
so take it as you will.
yeah.
Give it a chance. If you've seen it
Mhm.
before and were iffy on it, I say give it a rewatch. Like I love to just throw this on,
Yeah.
and it's definitely, there's not many Star Wars movies that I don't feel like are like, most of them are a commitment. If you're gonna
Hmm.
throw one on, and
Hmm.
like you're probably gonna sit down and be watching it and focusing on it, unless
Hmm.
you've just seen it a million times, you know. But this one I love to just like have it on and just like,
Yeah.
yeah, if I'm doing something else, it's fun to look over and be like, oh yeah, they're on Kessel, you know.
Or that's kind of how me and my brother are like with Rogue One. If we're playing games, we'll have it on, and we'll be doing what we're doing. It's like, oh, um, oh my God, forgot his name. Cheer it. It's like you hear the Guardians of the Wills music. It's like, oh, cheer, it's about to do something. You
Yeah.
know, whether it's single-handedly taking down a TIE fighter or like beating the crap out of 8 stormtroopers. It's like, oh yeah, there's the music, he's doing something awesome.
Oh, I love that scene.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Rogue One's great.
Yeah. But
But
yeah,
yeah,
Solo,
it's
yeah,
good.
give it a chance, give it another watch. If you've only seen it once, give it another watch. Leave your baggage at the door and just
The movie has swagger that I just really love.
It does. And it has a scum and villainy angle that no other Star Wars movie has done.
Yeah, I how we always like reminisce about like Star Wars 1313 and like the Star Wars games, we like, all the ones that EA has canceled ever since, that like, hey, give us a Star Wars game without a lightsaber and stuff like that. Like, I want more Star Wars movies that's just people with blasters, and like it's exciting, it's more fun.
Yep.
Yeah, but I think that'll be it for Solo. I'm glad we got a Star Wars movie out of this.
Yeah.
We'll never cover Rise of Skywalker, probably. Oh, I guess if a guest chooses it.
Yeah, I won't be. I will listen to that episode, but I do not want to be in it because I cannot defend it.
I almost hope somebody does, just because I want to hear what someone would have to say. And you know, I do think the point of this podcast is finding a bright spot in a dark place, but
yeah.
some of these spaces are not as dark as others.
Yeah.
But thank you for coming back on.
Of course, always.
And talking Solo. You know, I feel like we went a little long this time, but it's always fun to catch up. And you know, Star Wars is something we're both very passionate about. So
yeah,
I had a feeling this one was going to go a little longer. But yeah, before we get out of here, you need to plug anything like that?
Nope. You can find me on Twitter, mostly at librarian GMR. That's where I'm usually can be found posting weird memes and whatever crosses my mind that day.
Pictures of your cat.
Pictures of the cat. Yep,
Which
exactly.
I saw got you pretty good today.
Yeah, you know, love hurts.
It does. I have some scars from my boys, but I can't help but love them.
Yeah. They're young enough to not know any better. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, one of mine, when we first got him, I was stepping over him and he reached up and got me right under my toenail, like all the way across. It was really bad. Yep.
Ouch.
He's lucky he's cute.
Yeah, exactly.
But all right, man. Well,
all right.
Thank you for joining me, and
Yeah,
everybody,
you bet.
thank you for listening. Go watch Solo.